Okay, so we've got our light bar made. Now it's time to wire this up. So for those of you who didn't watch the first video, this is the Harbor Freight Road Shock light bar. Because I couldn't really find a great stock solution to mounting this light, because I don't like the idea of drilling into the plastic roof, because I feel like after enough bumps and vibrations that's bound to end bad. So I fabricated this light bar using some machined, these were from a place called Rocky Mountain ATV, and essentially they're flag mounts, but they worked perfectly for this, and then the bolt goes in here. If you're interested in how that was made, definitely check out my first video, but this is about how to wire it. So now that I've got the light kit mounted, and I'm going to send this off to powder coating hopefully tomorrow, but we want to get the wiring run here. So this is basically the electrical connector there, and then this is, I'm using the stock, or I guess the Harbor Freight accessory kit for this, for wiring it up. So they do give you a way to direct wire this. The problem being is that I'm not, when you kind of calculate how many watts are going to be going through this, so I think that's 47 watts. You're starting to push to the edge of the range where I think it's really a good idea to direct wire a switch. So you can see one of the things I took out is I purchased this aftermarket switch, because this particular switch is designed to fit perfectly into the Wolverine's, one of their stub outs, or one of the empty spaces where you can add additional accessories. And so this switch should slide right in, so that's why I bought it. And then I replaced the Harbor Freight one. Also, when I felt the quality of the other switch, it was kind of concerning to me, because it felt rather flimsy, and I was worried that was going to break. So, but what's key about this one is this wiring kit has a relay, and you can see here it's rated for 40 amps, so that's a substantial relay. And then it's got all the wiring, so it's got the connector that you need to connect up into the light bar. It does come with one of these that basically just, is cut off and has two bare wires about that long, and then you can do your own wiring from there. The other nice thing about this kit is it does have the fuse built into it as well, and that's something that I would never wire one of these without having a fuse built in. Now, one note, for some reason, and I don't know why, it came with a 30 amp fuse. If you read the instructions, it'll tell you what the fuse rating is for the light bar you have. In my case, 7.5 amps is what you should have in there. So I removed this fuse, and they give you a bunch of fuses in the box for you to work with. So you can see here they give you a bunch of fuses of different amperages. But you can see here, let me pull out their guide, you can see here where it's saying, and I've got the 14-inch light bar, the suggested amp rating is 7.5 amps, and that's what I put in there. If I blow a fuse, then I may consider going to the 10 amp one, but that seems about right based on what they said, and I also did my own calculations. So we're going to go ahead and have to take some parts off of the Wolverine to do this. So let's go ahead and get started, and then we'll talk about this as I'm going to do a mod. So the one problem with this design right now is this can be turned on without having the key present, and I'm not a huge fan of that, because I don't want it if, we'll go out RV camping and we'll take our side-by-sides, and you never know when one of the kids might climb in and press some buttons, then you're going to come out and find your battery dead, or forget that the light bar is on for some reason, and then stop the machine and then realize you've drained your battery too late. So one of the things you can do, since this is basically a relay, which is going to be basically flipping an internal switch on this relay here, or coil probably in the case of this one. What we're probably going to do is I'll show you when we get to that part, is we need to run power through this switch. So is, if I recall correctly, and we'll do it again before we actually wire it up, that the power is coming straight from the battery on this blue wire. And what we'll do is we'll probably go ahead and remove this blue wire, and we'll actually power the relay from basically a key on power circuit from the machine. So that way you can't turn this on, because you'll flip the switch, but there won't be any power to the relay, there won't be any power to flip the relay on, and that'll ensure that the light bar can't be left on. So first thing that we're going to do is this windshield, which you may or may not have, needs to get pulled off. And then the next thing that needs to happen is all these bolts here on this firewall and the ones on the inside, that one, and so forth, all have to come off. And then we can remove this panel. And so if I can set the camera down to do that, I'll show you how that goes. Got all the bolts removed, slide this off. Now just be careful, because there's an electrical connector right here for the speed management system. They just need to be and also there are these breather hoses. You need to pull them out and push them through. And then you have the electrical connector here for the speed management system. Just press that up, pull it off, and now we have access to all the wiring. So what we're going to figure out here is what, somewhere under here there should be some wiring that we can tap into. That might be a good candidate for putting a connector on for the power on. So more to follow as we do a little troubleshooting. Alright, so there's all these connectors for accessories. So one of the accessories I have wired in here is the head unit slash GPS, the Yamaha Venture Pro. And so there's a bunch of wiring that came with that, but it fits into these stock plugs. And so, or actually that's the stock plug for the Venture Pro. But if you come up here, you'll see that there are a bunch of these accessory plugs, and they just have caps on it that look like this. I just took off the cap, press this little clip in, it'll slide right off. Now what I'm going to do, because one of the other projects I have slated for is I'm also going to install a winch. And so this winch comes with a wiring harness, and you can see here that it's got one of the plugs that clips in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just put a splice on this end, but you can see this is a key off switch. So here's my voltmeter. If I connect it to the two contacts, you can see here I don't have any voltage. So I'll go ahead and put the key on and we'll see voltage. Okay, got the key on. So now we should see some voltage here. This also tell us which wire. Okay, you can see that 12.6 volts. So it looks like the brown wire is the positive. So yep, positive, 12.6 volts. So we'll go ahead and use that to power our relay. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is figure out which of these wires goes to which. So blue wire, just go ahead and put this in. This is on the relay, so one of these should be power and one of these should go to ground, assuming that we understand the wiring from the switch. I believe black will be the ground. So quick way to find out is if this is the power or the ground. I'll put my probe in here. I've got my meter, continuity meter in, and I'll just go ahead and press it, and yep, so the blue wire is the ground. So that wire is the wire we're going to leave alone. Then if I pull off the white wire, might have to pull off the blue wire to get the white wire off. So if I take this one now with my continuity meter, I would expect that it would close the loop if I go to the positive, and it does. So this is the one, the white one here. We are going to basically probably make a cap for this so that we can cover it up so it won't get dirty or have any possibility of shorting, and just to make sure that we have the proper ground, which I would be surprised if this wasn't. You can take this wire off. Oh. It's on my switch pretty good. Okay. So take the black wire. Black here. And that checks out as well. So that's the primary ground. Then there's the ground for the relay. So now we know what we're doing. So like I said, we'll make a cap for this one so that we can take it out of play, and then we need to make a new connector here, which is going to come off of that wiring harness there with a splice, and then that way this relay can't go on unless the key is on. Okay, so I'm going to make the modified electrical connector here. So a couple things. I'm going to use this electrical cap, and I'm going to put some heat shrink tubing on it, and that's how I'll effectively disable or cap off that live wire. Then the other thing is now I got some wire here. I've got an electrical fitting. This is how I'm going to make the new lead, and then got my crimping tool here. So this will go on the end of this wire, and then crimp that on. And I've got some heat shrink tubing that will go with that, and I'll show you how that all kind of comes together here. All right, so these are kind of the predefined punch outs for the switches. So I just pull this little rubber insert out. like so, and we have room for a switch. And then we need both hands to do this, but we'll go ahead and just push our switch in, and you can see that it's got some clips here, and that should be enough to get it in, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so got the wiring done, so let me talk you through what I did. So here's my switch. I haven't all the way pushed it in, but it'll snap in. Just want to make sure I have everything the way I want it. I'm going to zip tie down all the wires and make sure, because this will probably be a bit of a chore to pull out when we're done. So right now the Wolverine is off. I can flip the switch. You can see that light here never turns on. So let's see what happens when I turn on the key here. Okay, Wolverine's on. Sure enough, and the headlight turns, or the light bar turns on. Turn it off. So again, that's key on, key off. Press the button, nothing. Press the button, nothing. So let's talk about how we did this. So come around to the front here. All right, so I fed the wiring up from behind the dash in there. Put a light on it for you. So you can see, hopefully down there. It's a little hard to get the camera. See down there where the light is. That's the switch. Ran the wires up here. Now, a few parts of this. So this is where I took the power from. Now this is just a temporary. This is not a good idea at all for hitting the road. But what I'm gonna do is, I've got this wiring kit because I'm also going to be putting in a winch. So I'm going to put a splice on this wire right here, and this wire will splice onto it. And that's how I will feed power off of this harness, because the little bit of power that this takes for the same reason for the winch, so you can't use it without key on, be more than enough to run our relay. So that's how that worked. And then a few other things to be aware of. So what do you do, because you're going to have to put the firewall back in this area, so what do you do to snake the wire through without drilling a hole? There's just a little bit of a gap between this air intake, and so what I did was I just pushed the wire from the harness underneath here and got it underneath, so when we put the cover on, it'll be able to get in. And then this is where the fuse is. Put, you know, positive and negative terminals on the battery, and you've got yourself that part of the wiring. Now the relay I'm gonna bolt in right here, so there's a hole, and what I'm gonna do, I don't have a sheet metal screw the right size. There's a hole here, but it's not threaded, so I'm just gonna take a sheet metal screw and thread the sheet metal screw in, and that'll hold this relay secure to the frame, because you don't want any problems with this rattling around. So I'll take care of that. And then this is the wiring harness, and I just, from the switch for the two wires that we are using, and that's just pushed in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a zip tie around all this extra wiring here. At some point, I may consider just cutting some of this wiring out and doing some splices. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and tuck it there because I don't have anything else that needs to fit in that space. Probably down the road, if I put an audio kit in this, I'll need that space, probably for the amplifier. So we'll leave it there for now, because that'll be just fine. And then the last piece to understand is, how do you run the wire? And so here's my light bar up here on the wire. I'm going to zip tie the wire to my frame here, and then the wire will wrap around and come down, and we'll hold it against this tube. And then the last part is, without having to drill any holes in the unit, Yamaha, right here where the dash meets the roll bar, left a little hole, and so I threaded the wire through that hole. So you can take the connector up here, and you can thread it through that hole and then fish it up, and that way I was able to run the entire thing. And then, I don't know if you can see that, but the wire just comes in the back side here, the firewall, and that's it. And so then at this point, after I put my sheet metal screw in, the only thing left to do is put the firewall back on, which is basically the reverse of what I've taken it off. Put my windshield back on and we're ready to go. I'm going to leave this apart because I've got one more wiring project ahead of me, and that's I'm going to put on the winch, and I'll make a video on how to do that. And then I also have a street legal kit for this, which will be quite involved because we're going to have to run wires from one end of this thing to another. So, and I'll also make a video on how I do that. If you like my content, please follow my YouTube channel.